Hello everyone, Nathan here, and at the start of the year, I like to put out some predictions about what I expect to see from the major gaming franchises, partially because it's fun, and partially so that I can look like a total idiot come December. So let's do exactly that for 2017, and we'll kick things off with a biggie, Call of Duty. Now, the 2016 release of Infinite Warfare has been seen by many as maybe the start of the end for Call of Duty as gaming's biggest franchise. It sold poorly in comparison to previous titles, got a ridiculous level of negative backlash from the community, and even had to rely on the nostalgia for a revered previous title to sell this new entry. Sure, even a bad sales year for Call of Duty still means profits that most companies could only dream of, but for all the reasons I've just listed, 2017 is going to be a very important year for COD. There's a real need to bring fans back on side and get people to actually have positive feelings towards the series again. Now, the development cycle for COD games means that we get a 3-year rotation of devs, and this year it's the turn of Sledgehammer, whose last entry into the series was Advanced Warfare, which was one of the first shooters to go along the jetpacks and wall running route, alongside the likes of Titanfall. So the precedent is there for yet another futuristic COD, with all the crazy gadgets and guns that we've come to expect from the series in recent years. That being said though, I don't think that's the way they'll go. Instead, I expect to see that boots on the ground gameplay that series veterans have been clamouring for a long time. Rumours have been swirling around about a Vietnam setting or even Modern Warfare 4, and out of the two, I certainly see Vietnam as more likely. Not least because Modern Warfare has always been an Infinity Ward branch rather than Sledgehammer, although they did work on Modern Warfare 3. It just seems less likely that Sledgehammer would be the lead on that game. So what justification do I have for thinking a Vietnam setting could happen? Well, there's the fact that Sledgehammer have worked on a Vietnam Call of Duty game before that was eventually cancelled in 2011. This suggests that they may already have a decent idea for a story to follow and ideas for weapons and gameplay moments that have already been investigated. Alongside that, Michael Condrey of Sledgehammer has said that they are listening closely to what fans want and ideas about how to continue that going forward. And the one thing that you'll always hear from series fans is that they want rid of all the crazy bouncing off walls and double jumping, and a Vietnam setting would obviously get rid of those. Honestly though, there's not really that much reason to think a Vietnam setting is any more likely than any other boots on the ground themes. So while that will remain my prediction, I wouldn't be too surprised by almost anything, so long as it is a move away from that futuristic style of gameplay that we've seen in the past 3 entries into the series. I'm not a huge Call of Duty fan myself, but I do want it to be a good game every year. I do get a good couple of weeks of fun out of it, so I really want to see them hit form again. Having talked about Call of Duty then, next up we should probably get to their big shooter competitor, Battlefield. Although honestly, there's going to be a little bit less to say here, as I'd be very surprised to see a new Battlefield game in 2017. The schedule for Battlefield games going forward looks to be built around avoiding release clashes with the other EA shooter property, Star Wars Battlefront, and Battlefront 2 has basically been confirmed for a 2017 release. I would though expect to hear something about the next Battlefield project, which is likely to be one of the spin-offs from the series rather than another main entry. And it'll probably be slated for release in 2018, with another full Battlefield title coming a year later in 2019. So what could that spin-off be? Well, last time we obviously got the cops vs robbers game Battlefield Hardline, which was a little bit underwhelming as far as sales go for the series, and that was partially down to the lack of coherence between gameplay and theme, and partially because many people felt that Battlefield 4 was just a better game. So this time I'd expect to see something of another military-style spin-off rather than something crazier like Hardline, potentially following a distant future conflict of the type seen in Battlefield 2142. That sort of setting wouldn't compete too much with Battlefield 1, as it'd offer a very different style of gameplay, and therefore would be unlikely to overly cannibalize that player base. One concern would be that it would have more impact on the Battlefront player base though. I think though that if EA and DICE are willing to lower their expectations for the series between the major numbered releases, then maybe Battlefield 2143 could be a thing that's not too far off. As for what I'd actually like to see, Well, I think Battlefield 1 has demonstrated the desire for historical experiences, no matter how unrealistic they actually are, and I'd love to see the next Battlefield game look at another conflict from the past, such as the Korean War of the 1950s. This would offer an actual conflict in a Cold War setting, and still offers the potential for multiple factions, including the US, Britain and the USSR. I don't think it's at all likely that this will happen, but I think it'd make an excellent spin-off from the series. Next up is Assassin's Creed, which for the first time in ages didn't have a yearly main series release in 2016. Well, at least if you don't count that silly Ezio collection. That happened apparently because Ubisoft saw that the series was growing stale and wanted to change things around for the next release and give consumers a bit of time to cool off from the series. Now, this time last year I said I'd go along with the rumour that the next Assassin's Creed would be set in ancient Egypt, and there's been nothing this year that would change my mind that that's what's going to happen. I think the plan was always going to be to keep the series moving forward in time until we got to some kind of modern day Assassin's Creed, although obviously not with Desmond Miles. But after seeing the diminishing interest in the series and fans and reviewers getting gradually more tired of the same old formula, it seems as though Ubisoft have rethought and are looking to try to take the series back in time to find its feet again. What I'm hoping for this time is some actual basis in a real interesting historical story. For me, what made the Ezio games more interesting than the more recent entries into the series wasn't necessarily the gameplay, because that's remained much the same. Instead, it was that I was interested in the characters and the time period. Every piece of information I know about the Borgias is because of Assassin's Creed, and although there's obviously quite a lot of inaccuracies and made up stuff in there, there was a lot of fun in learning about these genuinely interesting historical figures, and I just felt that the later games didn't have that, in terms of both the characters and the setting. Fortunately, ancient Egypt could easily offer more of those interesting themes, and while I certainly don't claim to be a historical expert by any means, I think it's fairly safe to assume that Ramesses and the Ptolemies, or Cleopatra alongside the dominating power of Rome, would make for some top-notch historical action. If you're looking for more evidence of an Egypt theme, there's a nice little reference to it in Watch Dogs 2, where Ubisoft employees talk about Unity, Syndicate and Osiris, with Unity and Syndicate obviously being previous releases in the series, which makes Osiris sound like it's the next game for Assassin's Creed. The title that's being bandied around for this one is Assassin's Creed Empire, and I think this is one of the more likely releases on this list for 2017. Only a couple more to go now, and we come on to Tomb Raider. This is one that wasn't going to make it onto the list, but fairly recent leaks have been compelling enough to make me think about the next Tomb Raider game. Those leaks talk about a new game coming in late 2017 or 2018, called Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That information was leaked in Montreal, leading to speculation that Eidos Montreal will be working on the game alongside Crystal Dynamics, which gives the leaks some kind of credibility. Now, it's fairly safe to say that we'll be following Lara Croft around looking for some kind of treasure, but as far as predictions go, this one could really go anywhere, so I'm going to do the best I can with very little information. Firstly, I don't think we'll see this game get a 2017 release, no matter what the leaks have been saying. It seems too close to the most recent release in the series, Rise of the Tomb Raider, particularly given the fact that the PS4 version of the game came out just this year. That, mixed with the time between the last two releases, suggests to me a 2018 release date. I do though think we'll get some kind of announcement this year, with more information as to what to expect. I'll also say that I'm finding it gradually harder and harder to root for Lara Croft, as her motivations seem to become more and more selfish with each new release. Nonetheless, I'd expect to see more survival elements creep into the game, and much of the same sort of third-person gunplay and stealth movements. And no matter what my reservations about the character motivations in this game, I am interested to see what comes next for the series, and I hope they take enough time with it to give us a new and interesting experience. So we're on to the final series now then, and I've gone with The Elder Scrolls. Now, when I first played Skyrim back in 2011, one of my friends texted me and said that I'd lose at least the next 2 weeks of my life to the fantasy realm, and despite initially thinking that that was nonsense, that is exactly what happened. I loved my first playthrough of Skyrim, and it led to many more replays of the game, alongside the acquisition of Oblivion and Morrowind, and honestly, it feels like I've been waiting for a new Tamriel experience for far too long. Sure, there was The Elder Scrolls Online, but that was nothing like what I was actually after. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to have to wait a while longer. Everything coming out of Bethesda seems to be refuting a new Elder Scrolls game for a long time yet, and while that could just be misdirection, I honestly doubt it. That being said, I think that all the talk about it not even being in development yet is probably not true, especially given the amount of time it usually takes to make one of these type of games. After all, it seems very odd that they wouldn't want to make a game that would undoubtedly be a huge moneymaker, and they can't have too much more of a prospect for monetizing Skyrim. I mean, they've already released the remaster, so what else can they do with that? Personally, I think that we won't hear anything about this one in 2017 though. I'd say that when we do get information, it'll be a very similar sort of launch to Fallout 4, where it's announced in 2018 and released shortly after. However, there is still the chance that Elder Scrolls 6 could happen in 2017, no matter how small, and that's why it's on this list. As for what it'll be, well, it's likely to take on another area of Tamriel as its home, much like previous titles in the series. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Argonia being the setting, but I actually think that Valenwood is more likely, and that's for a number of reasons, including the pretty subjective theory that I think that an Argonian setting would just be too annoying. Maybe it's just me, but the established Argonian gravelly style voices being constantly thrown at the player character would just be a little grating, and I think instead going to Valenwood, the home of the Wood Elves, would make for a much more pleasant gaming experience. From more of a business point of view, I also believe it's easier to sell a game based around an elvish wonderland rather than the homeland of the lizard people. I could of course be wrong, and most of what I'm saying here is based purely on my own feelings about the series and what I'd like to see, so maybe Bethesda will take this one in a completely different direction. Either way, I sincerely hope that we get a hold of whatever Tamriel adventure Bethesda is cooking up next, sooner rather than later. So that's about it for today, thanks for watching. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. What are you expecting from gaming in 2017? Please do let me know. If you enjoyed the video as well, I'd be very appreciative if you'd click that like button down below, and subscribe for more like this if you haven't already. I've been Nathan, thanks for watching, Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time.